There's 4 weeks to go now until Identity Week Europe opens its doors in Amsterdam at the Rai. I'm very pleased this morning to say that I'm joined by Daniel Goldscheider, who's from the Open Wallet Foundation, and who will be speaking on the verification for wallets at the upcoming event. Welcome, Daniel. What is the role of associations or foundations like the Open Wallet Foundation? And what's the value in participating?
So we see, a couple of roles for a couple of different organizations. It all starts really with open standards, and you have so-called SDOs, Standard Development Organizations, that are basically bringing communities together to create these global open standards. In our world, those standards would include, for instance, OpenID or verifiable credentials from W3C, or maybe the FIDO passkey standard. And of course, on top you have the actual wallets, something like the Google Wallet or the Samsung Wallet or the Apple Wallet, or maybe wallets like the MoSIP wallet or cryptocurrency wallets. What we are focusing on is essentially the glue between those wallets and the open standards underneath. We're bringing developers together to create open source software that is always based on open standards and then used by those wallets. So we are not creating standards and we're not creating wallets, but really focusing on the open source components between the two.
And you've mentioned standards are a big component and they underpin all of these wallets. How have ISO versus open standards evolved?
Well, there is quite a lot going on in the standard space as well. So you see, for instance, a very important ISO standard for mobile driver's licenses called ISO MDL and MDoc. And you have, competing standards, or at least standards that are, loosely in the same category, like W3C verifiable credentials, or maybe, Hyperledger and OnCreds, or now, probably SD-JOTS. As far as Open Wallet is concerned, we're trying to be completely impartial and neutral. So we are very happy to work on top of, an ISO standard like MDL, as well as on top of other standards like, Hyperledger, for instance, or W3C standards. I think it's going to take quite a long time, if it's ever happening, for the world to really come together and agree, for instance, on one credential format or on one protocol to transmit credentials. So as far as we're concerned, any standard that is getting traction and where developers are interested to develop open source on top of is very welcome.
Brilliant. There's been lots of research out there at the moment. I don't know if you've seen. Are some sectors, for example, like finance services, do they need to take a bigger stake in these identity wallets with their payment credentials and kind of integrating those payment methods into wallets?
Yeah, it's a very good question, because some people in the industry, unlike most consumers, I think, are looking at digital wallets through a specific lens. So people in the industry may hear wallet and say, "Oh, of course, that's about digital identity." Anything from ID cards to driver's licenses. Or maybe people in the credit card world would say, "Yeah, of course, digital wallets are important because they hold tokenized credit cards and tokenized debit cards." But the truth is that digital wallets, I think, are all that, but so much more. They will hold everything from academic credentials to healthcare credentials, to digital keys, whether they are car keys or room keys, to cryptocurrencies, and they may hold tokens that allow access to your bank account, for instance. Digital wallets might be a really good place for your FIDO passkeys, which are going to hopefully replace passwords in the future. So we're trying to take a truly holistic view, and we are hopefully going to enable really developers for all of those industries to come together and create great open source components So if you are interested to publish a wallet, you can then pick and choose, and you can say, I do care about car keys or don't care about car keys. And if you do, you take that component. If you don't, no harm done. I think when it comes to the players, there will be different ecosystems in different jurisdictions. So, for instance, with the European Digital Identity wallet, I believe that governments will very likely be leading issuers of the identity credentials. In other parts of the world, governments may choose not to issue such credentials. And so I think, you'll see different players look at different parts of that ecosystem in different jurisdictions. But at the end of the day, we need interoperable solutions. So whoever the issue is, whatever the wallet is, whatever the protocols are, I think in many ways we want to simply ensure that we're not taking a step backwards. Because if you use a UK driver's license in a wallet that you bought in Milan and you are, showing that to someone in Hong Kong, you will be able to rent a car with that driver's license. So I think, in some ways we have a very defensive goal. We want not to lose that capability and ensure that that driver's license, issued in the UK in a Italian wallet is still going to be useful in Hong Kong in the future.
And thanks for that. That's a really great answer. And interoperability is really important. It brings me to my next question. Do you think competition of so many different wallets out there is beneficial for innovation or is detrimental to interoperability?
I realize it's an either or question, but I think the answer to the question is still yes. So I do think it is very important to have competition. I think competition is inherently a good thing. I also believe that it is really critical that while maintaining a healthy market that does bring competition, we are agreeing to both technical as well as regulatory standards, so that with all that competition, we are still able to come up with solutions that coexist well. Take, I don't know, the car industry, for instance, or the smartphone industry. You have very different cars on the street, but they all fit inside the same box. And it's okay to have different cars from the same manufacturers on the same street, or different phones operating in the same mobile networks, because we are able to agree in this case, for instance, on GSM and a 5G standard. So in my opinion, the ideal world is one where we agree on open standards, where we then use open source software in order to ensure that we interpret those standards in a somewhat similar fashion, which is going to help interoperability as well. It's also going to lower cost, which allows hopefully more wallet vendors to play in this market. So we want competition, but we want competitors to agree on a couple of things in order to coexist well.
Brilliant. I'm really excited to have you on the agenda for Identity Week Europe, which is just in 4 weeks, as I said. You're going to be speaking a bit more about wallets and verification and security for wallets. So I just wondered, kind of before that, could you give us an idea of, is the standard of security in wallets good enough at the moment, and how can it be made more secure? And what will you be discussing at the event?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge again when it comes to standards is that there is no one standard or one architecture. When you look at government-focused initiatives, the European Digital Identity Wallet is likely going to look very different than the wallet architecture that the provinces in Canada, for instance, are using. So we're not going to try and prescribe one architecture to say this is the one architecture that every country and every private sector company will need to use around the world. Not because it wasn't desirable. I think it would be a good idea if conversations over time led to a more harmonized architecture and for best practices to emerge, probably on a global basis. But I think it will take some time. So at the moment, you'll see both different geographies as well as different industries really look at the same problems again and again and again, almost from scratch. So hopefully we will be able to create a really large tent for a lot of developers that they can, look at those challenges together. So, in the end, sovereign countries will make their sovereign decisions, and large industry players like EMVCo are going to continue to create standards. But our goal would be that we are bringing different developers and actors together to hopefully agree on some of those best practices. I'm excited about Identity Week, and I'm excited to talk a little about what we're trying to do and why we believe this is going to benefit virtually everyone, whether you're a company creating wallets or a company interested to issue credentials, or maybe a public sector representative. We believe that open source software on top of open standards is really going to be beneficial for everybody.
Thank you so much for joining me. This topic of wallets is, really hot on the agenda, and I look forward to having you at the event. Thank you very much.
Thank you.